terms of support for the Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre. And that was, a little bit harder for Pierre Poilievre than it was for the previous candidate during the federal election. He had displaced voluntarily the local candidate that had been elected in that federal election, and that was something his political opponents were keen to bring up a lot during that by-election race. We had an independent candidate who talked a lot about how he was, parachuting in for his own political gains. Ultimately, he managed not to lose much support, considering the level of fatigue that must be going on in that riding with federal politics, and the longest ballot committee, the number of names that were on that ballot as well, complicating
right?
things. Yeah, complicating things massively for Elections Canada, but also a risk for Pierre Poilievre in terms of turning people off of participating. And so I think that ultimately this just shows, the amount of effort that he was willing to put in, and now he can return to Ottawa, with some momentum behind him, a show of strength, and not have to answer to that or think about that. He can sort of think about the next challenge in terms of coming back.
One of the next challenges, of course, will be a leadership review that the Conservative Party requires happen after any electoral defeat. That's set to happen in January. Does the victory yesterday, does that change any of the dynamics there?
I don't think it massively changes the dynamics, but it is sort of another factor. If things had gone badly for him, if they lost, 10-15% of the support in the riding, for example, that would be sort of another data point for people who are thinking about whether or not this is the guy they want to continue to follow into the next election. Conservatives don't often give their leaders a second chance after losing an election. And for him, he lost not only the election, but his seat in the House of Commons, had to spend his summer regaining a seat in an entirely different part of the country. And so being able to win this with some strength puts this episode behind him a little bit, and now they can look forward. That doesn't guarantee him a good result in the leadership race by any means, but it does give sort of detractors, I guess, one fewer thing to sort of point to as a reason to oust him. And I should mention as well that there's no one actively campaigning against him at this point. There seems to be strong support for Pierre Poilievre, but the Conservatives, as I say, don't typically give their leaders second chances.
No, you look at Erin O'Toole, you look at Andrew Scheer, and it's a very different dynamic this time with Pierre Poilievre, with nobody openly challenging him, and he worked very quickly and very carefully after the election loss to sort of shore up support very clearly. Before I let you go, I do want to spend a bit of time talking about Air Canada. The strike is now coming to an end. There'll be a ratification vote, but airlines saying set to begin gradually over the course of today, likely starting this afternoon. The political dimension in all of this is that within hours of the strike starting, the Labour Minister came out and said she had no choice. She forced the parties into binding arbitration, or at least tried to force them. And there's been pushback from not just the flight attendants union, but many in the Labour community. What is the political cost of this for the federal Liberals?
I think the political cost is less than it would have been under Justin Trudeau. I think if you think back even to December when the Canada Post strike was on, sort of in the height of the Christmas rush, there was a lot of hand-wringing among the Liberals about what to do about that. And back in the day, you had the NDP on one side of the Liberals, super pro-Labor, very supportive of sort of workers' action. And then on the other hand, you had the Conservatives very concerned about the economy. And so the Liberals, I think, felt very comfortably in the middle, straddling economic and labor concerns. Under Pierre Poilievre, what we saw is that the Conservatives started to sort of court that Labour vote, and the Liberals were left hanging a little bit and appeared to be, in some circles, the least Labour-friendly party going. And so I think that has created a bit of an identity crisis for the Liberals in terms of how they handle these sort of things. Under Justin Trudeau, they were slow to react, I think, to the postal strike in comparison to how they've reacted to this Air Canada strike under Mark Carney, and I think it just goes to show that with a strong economic mandate, Mark Carney is slightly less concerned about these things and slightly more confident in what his mission is, which is to keep the economy humming.
There is, though, a question about just the frequency with which this Section 107 has been used, and the way in which it halts, or some would argue
they're worried about the current economic needs above just about everything else at the moment. That could change, of course, as support for Carney slips over time, if that were to happen, if the country's concerns started to shift away from strictly economic concerns to other things. And so I think the Liberals' relationship with the unions is going to be really, really interesting to watch, because they're still trying to figure that out under sort of their new regime under Mark Carney.
Laura, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thanks so much for having me, David.
That's Laura Osman, federal politics reporter at The Logic. It's 6:28. July Talk playing the CNE band shell this Friday. Here they are with Life of the Party.
Ministry of Labor said the province has a heat stress toolkit to help workplaces create a plan to respond to extreme heat, and schools are required to have heat protocols in place. Police in York Region say they've charged 2 teenagers after a stolen vehicle crashed into a police car last week in Vaughan. Police responded to a report of a suspicious vehicle in a plaza near Highway 7 West and Keele Street Friday night. They say the 2 suspects intentionally crashed the vehicle into the police car before they attempted to leave in a rideshare. Police allege the 17 and 18-year-olds also had a loaded firearm in the vehicle. They face numerous charges. In other news, Toronto aid groups are warning that food delivery programs could be forced to shut down if the province wins an appeal to remove key bike lanes in the city. Community Fridges Toronto relies on cyclist volunteers from a group called Bike Brigade to get food to fridges around the city. Organizer Joy Goff says removing the lanes would be their safety at risk and could end some delivery routes altogether.
I don't think we could do what we do without the Bike Brigade. There is absolutely no way that we could move the amount of food that we move. It would be impossible. It would be a huge impact. I think it'd be really hard and very negative for those people that actually get home deliveries.
Last month, an Ontario court ruled the removal of bike lanes unconstitutional. The province says it plans to appeal that decision. And lastly, a temporary injunction preventing large unsanctioned gatherings at a Mississauga plaza is set to resume today at noon. This comes after the city says they've received complaints about excessive noise, stunt driving, and illegal use of fireworks at Bridgeway Plaza over the years. The court order covers cultural celebration dates such as tonight's Afghanistan Independence Day celebrations, where thousands are expected to gather. The injunction mandates the owners of the plaza to take measures to restrict such gatherings. Mississauga Mayor Carolyn Parrish says although most owners and condo boards follow the rules,
Ridgeway stands out amongst the crowd as the worst one right now. And so far, the condo owners that are running that plaza have not agreed to do any of the modifications that we've suggested.
Mayor Parrish says it costs the city up to $24,000 every time they're called in to clear these unsanctioned gatherings at the plaza. The hefty bill is passed on to the owners in hopes that preventative actions will be taken. CBC Toronto reached out to the Condo Corporation for comment, but did not receive a response. The injunction will run until 2 a.m. Wednesday. That is the CBC News. Jennifer's back with a look at the drive.
The westbound 401 is getting busier west of Broad Street towards Salem. We finally got the all clear for the construction at White's Road. That was in the collectors, but all lanes working, cleared and working well. There's volume past Morningside through Markham Road and Victoria Park towards Bayview in the Express. Eastbound 401 is slowing down approaching Huron, Ontario to the 410 in the Express, the 410 to east of Dixie Collectors, then the 427 towards the 400 in the Express and Collectors, and then there's minor volume through Keele in the Collectors. The Toronto-bound QEW is beginning to fill in, approaching the Burlington Skyway to Fairview, and east of Mississauga Road to approaching Dixie. Southbound 400, I'm seeing volume from Line 5 to south of Aurora, and then south of Shepherd to the 401 ramps, and southbound 404 in the Don Valley gets sluggish south of Finch, easing south of Lawrence. Back to Nicole with your forecast.
So it's going to be mainly cloudy today. We'll see some showers beginning late this afternoon. A high of 23. It's going to feel a few degrees warmer with the humidex. We've got the risk of a thunderstorm this evening and after midnight. We're looking at another maybe 10 to 20 millimeters of rain, a low of 19 degrees overnight. And then tomorrow, again, cloudy with a chance of showers, a high of 23. It's going to feel like 29 with the humidity. Right now in downtown Toronto, 17 degrees and mostly cloudy.
So, you keep hearing from us, Air Canada strike coming to an end. A tentative agreement struck at 4:23 a.m. and service will begin to resume this evening. Whose flights are going to run first? We don't have that official word from Air Canada, but here's some things we do know. It is easier to have a flight that runs out of a hub like Toronto, because the plane is here and the crews are here, and then have them fly to places. Having said that, if you were in Tokyo, for instance, the plane is not there, and the pilots are not there. So they need to first get pilots there both parents work, and so their deal is they get like a massive bag of potatoes anytime. And the boys are told, whenever you're hungry, stick a potato in the microwave. And they have things you can put on the potato, but that's it. Potato is your friend.
I mean, that's genius.
Yes, it is.
I love
Yes, it is.
Okay, what are your thoughts on sweet potatoes? I love sweet potatoes.
Look, I like spicy food, but I am good with just a straight baked potato.
Yep.
At any time. A sweet potato, yes.
Sweet potatoes so good.
Yeah. I did not like them as a kid.
Me neither. Susan's coughing.
Oh, Susan.
Susan's coughing. Tell us.
Every day you're in that seat, I get an invite at this time of the morning
Oh,
to come in and chat.
oh.
National Potato Day.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, and I didn't.
Didn't want to be stereotypical here, but
So I invited myself.
yes, Susan, do you have something to add on? Do you have potatoes where you come from?
We have potatoes where I come from.
That's Ireland, you say.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah, okay.
Yes, the land of the spud. Yes.
Yes.
Happy National Potato Day. That's all I want to share.
That's all you wanted to share.
That's it.
Are you a potato fan?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huge potato fan. Potato. Lots of butter. More butter than potato. Can't go wrong.
Grow a lot of potatoes in this province. PEI is the big place, but there are a lot of potatoes in this province. We'll do a road show, potato harvest one day.
Okay, I'm with you. I'll be in charge of that one for sure. Thank you for the non-invitation.
Yes, well, thank you for dropping by on this, the great heralded National Potato Day. It is 6:40 a.m. Shift gears. On the face of tariffs, supply chain issues, and an industry owned by a handful of giants, independent grocer Bestco Fresh Foods is expanding in Toronto. How well can a grocery store fare in an industry with so little room for competition? Vass Bednar joins me in studio to break it all down. She's the managing director of the Shield Institute. Vass, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. This surprised me because you've got Whole Foods, which is shutting down some of its footprint in the GTA.
Yeah.
You got all these foreign competitors who get invited to come in to compete in Canada who say, no, not going to do it.
Right.
What does this signal to you that an independent grocer is actually expanding here?
I mean, I think it's pretty cool. It's difficult to compare Bestco to Whole Foods, though.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it's so kind of niche and select with its market. So it's almost like it has a proven business model in serving a particular audience.
Let's talk
maybe
about
solving
who
a
that
need.
is.
Yeah.
Because some people may not know. It may compete more with like a T&T, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the two languages, often Chinese and English, right? So that's interesting to see in Canada. They're not advertising sort of also in French. Kind of a discount grocery store that's also importing a lot. So they're competing on niche items that you can't get anywhere else, and that might be a staple of your heritage, or maybe where you were eating and came from before you came to Canada. So that's an interesting dimension too.
And so that is, I guess, their unique-ish offering in the market, but it's a tough market. Grocery in this country is a tough one to break into. How can this young company compete against the more established, larger conglomerates, places like Loblaws?
I mean, maybe they're going to compete with them just by signaling their differences, right? So this is a privately held, family-owned company. It doesn't seem that they're also a real estate company, which most of the dominant grocers are. They also don't seem to have their own private label products. Again, and they don't have a loyalty program. The discounting that I've seen is more traditional, kind of coupon-based. Their advertising on social media is kind of old school. A flyer, pictures of flyers that these are the deals this weekend. So I think I'm going to speculate on their strategy. It seems like they're just doing things a bit differently.
The real estate company thing is an interesting analogy. A lot of people will not look at a Loblaws and say, what do you mean it's a real estate company? But Bestco rents, as far as we can tell anyway, and Loblaws owns a lot of footprint.
Yeah, which means they can also decide who else can access that land, because they're the landlord. So the Competition Bureau is looking into, as an aside, property controls used by grocery stores, but we know that the Bureau a couple of years back had their market study on grocery too. So yes, they rent, but it'll be a big test, right? One of their locations is ground floor retail at the next iteration of Mirvish.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really interesting. That's kind of exactly where you want to have grocery in a downtown setting, right? And facilitate people who maybe aren't driving.
Why is it so hard to break into the grocery industry here?
Grocery on its own has very slim margins.
Yeah.
And, you want to balance, you're balancing, relationships with suppliers and trying to purchase in bulk while also trying to move a certain amount of goods in a certain amount of time because the clock is ticking on that food. And that's why most grocery stores are more than a grocery store. And Loblaw is that classic example where one of my collaborators and I call it kind of an everything store in a Canadian context, right? You have a financial element, PC Financial, you can get a cell phone there. You have the loyalty program with points and kind of data and tracking. So they can build a very sophisticated profile and knowledge of shoppers, which can help inform kind of product lines or offers to sort of give you. That's part of why it's really hard. The other reason, we're always told this as Canadians that geography is our destiny, right? Or we can't have nice things. We can't have more competition because of how our population is dispersed. But in grocery, that's a reality too, right? Where can you open these sorts of stores and at what scale and footprint, and then how do you access that land and that space?
We were talking about TNT, and so if I'm making the bridge and saying TNT is probably the closest competitor in the market to Bestco, if that is the case, I look at what happened to TNT. They were freestanding, then Loblaws came in and bought them, and has owned them for a few years. Why wouldn't Loblaws just try to buy Bestco?
I mean, maybe they will, maybe they should, right? The goal of Bestco as a company could be to have a unique offering that no one else does so that it has a higher valuation and is desirable. That's okay, right? Big isn't necessarily bad if we're able to sort of protect their unique offering. But in terms of how they compete, how a grocery store competes, it's not just competing for our time and our dollars. They're also competing with suppliers and the relationships that they have. And right now, food coming from China doesn't have a ton of extra tariffs on it. And they're also competing on labor. So will they be a better employer in the grocery sector? Will they be able to compete on talent? Will that be something that attracts people to a different store? Again, in terms of their strategy, I'm sure Loblaw would similarly present itself as a traditional family-owned company. But I think this is kind of a different situation.
A different situation, yeah. If we're to see continued growth and particularly diversity of ownership in the grocery industry, what would it mean for people shopping?
It could mean, we always come down to price. I think the variety is something that everybody's interested in at the grocery store. We've been so caught up right now as Canadians between like made in Canada, product of Canada. Every time I go to the grocery store, it's Canada Day, right? We're trying to understand the composition of food products, but also that doesn't tell you anything about the ownership of the parent food company. Like a lot of Coca-Cola products are made here often, but it doesn't mean that it's a Canadian company. So I think Canadians do support alternatives, and this is a Canadian alternative. This is a challenger in the space that is being pretty modest, but I think it's pretty exciting that they're opening 2 stores in Toronto. One's forthcoming, I think, and one's opening quite soon.
Okay, so that's Bestco Fresh Foods. We're going to continue.
Best name, by the way.
It is. It is
It's
really
a good name. It's a really good name.
Yeah, it just rolls off the tongue
Right.
easily too. Hey, listen, I'm always fascinated by our conversations because you do work at the nexus of so many things in technology and consumer rights and labor rights and your thoughts this morning on the end of the Air Canada dispute.
I'm finding it frustrating. Weighing our potential discomfort around travel plans that have to change against unpaid labor for workers. I found sort of jarring, but yeah, it's a sudden shift earlier today, isn't it?
Yeah. No, we're all just sort of digesting it all. But even the invoking of Section 107 by the federal government, which has happened multiple times, which does put an end to strikes, and that is about the only thing a worker can do.
I know, it reduces that threat so much. It reduces that threat so much, and that's a powerful threat and a powerful element for workers. Air Canada workers have been organizing for quite some time. I got a postcard like 2 years ago walking, in downtown Toronto about the unpaid labor, and I didn't know. And it was like time to something, or like it had a catchy phrase, obviously that I can't remember it, that's how catchy it was, but I didn't have the awareness that, the clock didn't start in terms of how people are doing work. So in terms of what we value in Canada and how we want people to be supported at work, this is a conversation that won't go away. And I don't think it's going to make people any less frustrated with the air travel experience for large, but hopefully we can be more forgiving and kind to the frontline workers.